Hello, my dear students and any other person watching this lecture. A very good morning to each and every one of you. Our topic for today is political parties in the United States. This will be the last topic from this unit, that is from the unit of the Constitution of United States. From the next lecture, we will start picking up a new unit. Actually, the last 1 week has been a very tough time for us because there was incessant rainfall, no electricity, and very poor internet connection. Apart from that, I was busy with internal assessment questions and some other responsibilities from the district administrations. But somehow, we have overcome that. Weather has become much better, electricity is back, and internet connection is also back. Particularly in our college, Wi-Fi is back at least for some time today. So from now on, we will continue with our online lecture as usual. In this particular video, we will begin with a brief overview of the topic, growth of political parties, and list of the presidents of United States, and we will come to the characteristics of party system in the United States, which is very important for this particular lecture or particular topic. Then we will come to a little bit of difference between Democrats and Republicans, criticisms, and finally a brief summary. Now let's begin with a brief overview. Political parties are indispensable or an important element in the working of any democratic governments, be it United States, India, UK, Japan, or any other democratic countries. Without political parties, it is unthinkable for the democratic government to function. They are the backbone of democracy because government cannot function without political parties. They provide leadership and direction to the people, without which the power of the people under democratic system would remain meaningless or ineffective. In the United States, election for the office of president along with vice president is held every after 4 years without much interruptions in the past more than 230 years. There is also regular election for the Congress. There is the House of Representatives and the Senate, state governors, and in some state, lieutenant governors, state legislatures, local bodies, and others on a regular basis. And in all these elections, political parties played an important role. Now let's look at a brief history of the growth of political parties in the United States. Actually, the founding father of the Constitution of United States were largely against formal political parties. But informal parties or groups already exist even before the Constitution was adopted. This was followed by the Federalist and anti-Federalist groups among the founding fathers of the Constitution while the Constitution was under discussion and soon after the Constitution was adopted. George Washington, the first president of the United States, belonged to the Federalist group, but he was liberal enough or accommodative enough that he accommodated both the groups, that is, the Federalists as well as the anti-Federalists in his cabinet. In the 1820s, the anti-Federalists were in control, but this unity among themselves cropped up, which led to the House of Representatives to decide the president. Now, let's remind ourselves about the topic that we had already discussed on the President of the United States. In the election of the President, if no candidate won majority, that means more than 50% of the votes, then the House of Representatives will pick up 3 candidates who got maximum votes. And out of those 3 candidates, they will elect one of them as the president. And this provision of the Constitution was first utilized back in the 1824. We have got in 1828 Democratic Republicans, and after some time the Whig Party was formed. Now let's look at the list of elected presidents of the United States. As we have just discussed, George Washington was the president for the first time, and he was re-elected for the second time, and it is said that he refused to contest the election in the third presidential election. So his vice president became the president. Now just check it. I'm showing this list of presidents just to let you know that there has been two political parties since beginning. It was during this the latter part of the 19th century that the Republican as well as the Democratic started coming up. Yeah, in the latter part of the 19th century and early part of 20th century, we started seeing the Republican versus Democratic. Now, let's pick up one issue here. When President Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected, he was not elected only once but 4 times. However, he occupied the office for 3 consecutive terms in full. But after he was elected for the 4th time, somehow he was not able to occupy. He passed away, and his vice president, Harry S. Truman, became the president. Now let me tell you one thing. When George Washington, the first president of the United States, became the president for 2 consecutive terms and refused to contest for the 3rd time, a convention was created that the president of the United States should contest only for 2 consecutive terms. It was not written in the Constitution, but they have followed that as a tradition or as a convention. However, when Franklin D. Roosevelt became the president, he contested for 4 times and got elected 4 times. So after him, the Congress of the United States amended the Constitution and passed that the President of the United States should not be allowed to occupy office for more than 10 years. In other words, the term of the President is fixed or limited for a maximum of 10 years. This means that a particular President will not be able to contest election for 2 consecutive terms. Now, it became part of the Constitution that the President can contest only for 2 consecutive terms. Now see here, you will see the Republicans, then Democrats, Republicans, Democrats, until Joseph R. Biden, or simply Joe Biden, became the president recently. We have got presidents from both the Republican and the Democratic parties almost alternately. I'm showing this table just to let you know that in the past at least 1 century, the Democratic and the Republican candidates hold office almost alternately. Now let's come to the characteristics of party system. Extra-constitutional growth, a 2-party system, no fundamental ideological differences, geographical and traditional differences, and localism. Now let's see all these characteristics one after another. First, extra-constitutional growth means that political parties have grown without the Constitution or outside the constitutions in the United States. The founding fathers of the Constitution were opposed to party system. That was why presidential form of government and indirect election were introduced in the United States to keep political parties away. However, political parties somehow emerges in the form of local cliques in towns, counties, and states even before the Constitution was adopted. And as soon as the Constitution was adopted, the Federalists and Anti-Federalists came into existence. And finally, at present, we have the Democratic and the Republican Party as the 2 major parties. In short, all these political parties emerged outside the constitution, because there was no mention of the no mention of political parties in the constitution. Second, the United States has a two-party system or bi-party systems. In other words, there are two major political parties throughout its history. That doesn't mean that there are no other political parties, because there are many smaller parties that come and go, but never won elections at the national level. It is said that third parties in American politics played the role of innovators of policy and not holders of office. This means that they might be able to give a lot of new ideas or inputs to the government, but they are not able to hold office at the highest level. That means they never become the president and they never got majority in the Congress. However, in the state legislature and in the Congress, from time to time they will get some elected members. Third, no fundamental ideological differences. There are no major differences of policies between the Democrats and the Republicans. There is no fundamental ideological differences, since both uphold capitalism and opt for free enterprise. In short, there is not much of difference in their policies and ideologies when we talk about the Democrats and the Republicans. That was why Professor Feiner remarked that America has only one party. Fourth, geographical and traditional differences. This means that though there is no much of ideological differences between the two major political parties, there is a geographical and traditional difference in their support base. In the United States, many people become a member of a particular party simply because their forefathers were member of that party. They don't simply go by the doctrines, by the class, by the ideology, or by the policies and programs of the party, but most of the time they go by what their forefathers have followed. In the meanwhile, the Republicans derive their main strength from the industrial elements or the rich people, and the Democrats get support mainly from the poorer sections of the society. Fifth point, localism. The main strength of the party lies in their local organization. Elected members of Congress, or simply candidates of the Congress and state legislatures, are more concerned for their local issues than national problems. In fact, for the election of the president, they will focus more on the national problems, but for the election to the Congress and state legislature, they often focus on local issues. Now, let's look at some of the differences between the Democrats and the Republicans. We have just discussed that there is not much of ideological differences, or there is not much of major differences in terms of policies. But recently, there have been a lot of differences coming up between the Republican and the Democrats in their outlook or in their policies and in their ideas. First, in terms of philosophy, the Democrats are more liberal and left-leaning. They want more equality in the society. On the other hand, the Republicans are more conservative and right-leaning. They are more focused on the protection and preservation of the American culture. On the economic angle, the Democrats favor progressive taxation and minimum wages. Progressive taxation simply means that the higher the income, the higher should be the rate of taxation. If your income is very less, you have to pay less taxes, and if your income is high, you have to pay more taxes. This is meant to bring social equality, or to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. On the other hand, to fix minimum wages means that the government has to fix wages for the workers, minimum wages for the workers in whatever profession or field they are. But the Republicans are not in favor of increase of taxation. They are also not in favor of fixing minimum wages. They prefer that taxes should remain the same for everyone and wages should be fixed by the market rather than the government. Third, on the social and human angle, the Democrats are more concerned with the community and think that the government should be responsible to take to look at the welfare of the society. On the other hand, the Republicans are more concerned with individual rights and justice. In short, the Democrats are more concerned with the community or the society, and the Republicans are more concerned with individual rights. On the military angle, Democrats wanted to decrease spending on military because they wanted to divert funding from the military spending to the other sectors like education, health, economy, etc. On the other hand, the Republican wanted a strong America. That is why they wanted to increase spending on the military, including those on the veterans. And again, on the issue of gay marriage or same-sex marriage, Democrats are in support of it. They thought that it is an individual choice whether you want to marry an opposite sex or the same sex. A man can marry a man, a woman can marry a woman because it is their personal choice. So the government should not interfere. Instead, they should support those people who have different outlook. But the Republicans are opposed to gay marriage or same-sex marriage. According to the Republicans, it is by nature that two opposite sex should marry. In other words, marriage is a union of two opposite sex, man and woman. So they are against same-sex marriage, thinking that this is unnatural and immoral. When we talk about abortion, the Democrats are largely in favor of legalizing abortion. They thought that a woman should be free to choose whether she wants to have a baby or not, whether she wants to have a healthy baby or not, or she wants to bring out a child without the father. But for the Republicans, abortion should be made illegal. It should not be permitted except on some very, very special cases like medical case or rape cases or some other unavoidable circumstances. Otherwise, the Republicans thought that abortion should not be legalized. On that penalty, a small majority of the Democrats are in support of that penalty, and a large majority of the Republicans are in support of that penalty. In terms of taxes, as we have already discussed, Democrats are in favor of progressive taxes. Higher income, higher tax. Lower income, lower tax. But Republicans are in favor of flat tax, meaning everyone should pay equal rate of taxation. Now, on government regulation, Democrats thought that there is a need to protect consumers by the government or by the state. But Republicans thought that government regulation or government control hinder free market capitalism and job growth. In other words, Republicans thought that the market should be free without any government interference so that there will be more of economic growth and job growth. But the Democrats thought that the market should be regulated by the state. On the issue of healthcare policy, Democrats are in support of universal healthcare facilities. For example, everyone should have health insurance in the United States. They were in support of Obamacare because they thought that since healthcare facilities have become very, very expensive, and since many people are not able to afford the expensive healthcare facilities or the cost of healthcare, everyone should have health insurance or healthcare policy so that they won't face any problem when they are sick. But the Republicans thought that instead of the government, the private companies provide healthcare facilities more efficiently. So healthcare facilities should be left to the private companies. On the issue of immigration, the Democrats feel that everyone who came to United States or who entered into America should be protected on humanitarian ground. Whether they are illegal immigrant or legal immigrant, the American government as a civilized nation or as a civilized country should protect the rights of every individual coming to the United States. But the Republicans thought that those people who enter into America illegally or without proper documents should be sent back to their respective countries by force or by any means. So they were also in favor of constructing a border fencing between United States and Mexico because they thought that many of the illegal immigrants come along the border of Mexico and United States. But the Democrats were not in favor of constructing border fencing because they thought that people who are exploited or people who are persecuted in their country can always come to the United States because United States is a civilized nation where they can find peace. Traditionally, the Democrats are strong in the states of California, Massachusetts, and New York, and Republicans are more popular in the states of Oklahoma, Kansas, and Texas. In short, there are many states which are traditionally a strong base of Democrats, and there are also some states which are traditionally the stronghold of Republicans. But there are also some states where both the parties have more or less equal presence. Now let's come to a few points of criticisms. A committee of American Science Association in 1950 found out or identified some criticisms of party system in the United States. Number one is lack of discipline. Many people often goes against the party line. For example, Donald Trump, before he became the president, had changed his party more than once. There is also disparity between platforms and performance. There is also differences between what the politicians speak in the public platform and what they performed. Another weaknesses is weakness of leadership. This means that the political parties have usually weak leadership. Of course, the president of the United States or the leaders of the Congress normally become very powerful, but they become powerful by virtue of the position that they hold and not because they are the leader of the party. So they call for stronger, better, integrated, and more responsible political parties. Now to sum up, the American party system has always been one of the mysteries of American life to the inquiring strangers. Though political parties emerged outside the purview of the Constitution, they have played an important role in the American political system. In fact, American democratic system could have been a total failure if it were not without the presence of political parties. In other words, the presence of political parties have helped the functioning of democracy in a large or in a big way. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patient listening. This is the end of this unit. From the next lecture, we will start picking up a new unit. Thank you so much. Stay safe and take care.